We are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a business podcast on global PropTech, where we talk to founders and CEOs of PropTech companies from all over the world and learn from them how they are building their businesses. And today I'm thrilled to have with me Mark Phillips, who is the founder of NomadStays. NomadStays helps digital nomads to explore the world easier while growing their careers and business. Now, this is something that I picked um, from the from their website. I'm here to unearth it, unravel it. So, Mark, welcome to PropTechBuzz. How are you doing today?
Ravi, thank you so much for the invitation. It's just great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation and really looking forward to your audience, which probably quite interested in the change of dynamics around the world in the last couple of years.
That's correct. And what also catches my fancy is on the entire digital nomad space. Okay, this channel is for PropTech, and it's very interesting how PropTech and travel tech are interestingly merging. Okay,
Indeed.
because Airbnb, WeWorks, they tried to blur the lines. Okay. And that's where I really like talking to people who are exploring this domain, which is on the intersection between travel tech and prop tech. So
Yeah, it's complex area, Ravi, and it's constantly changing. So what we're talking about today didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago,
that's
and
correct.
probably won't exist in another 2 or 3 years. So it's really interesting space. It's growing quickly. So it's one of those standout parts of the world's economy. So
Excellent. So
it's exciting.
yes, these industries did not exist a few years ago. So cool. So before I mentioned about what Nomad Stays is, but I'm sure you will do a better job than me. Why don't you give us a lowdown on what is Nomad Stays? What is the problem that it is trying to solve in the world?
Sure. So NomadStays is fundamentally an accommodation booking platform,
Mhm.
but it's a niche platform for digital nomads, remote workers. We are now 3 years old. We were bootstrapped, and we are still bootstrapped. We opened just before COVID hit, which wasn't the ideal time to launch a global startup. But as it turned out, the market has heavily swung in our direction,
Mm.
and we've been growing at about 15% a month right through COVID for the last 3 years. So it's been consistent, strong growth on a global scale.
How lovely. So is it just accommodation, or are there other services that you offer beyond booking?
No, we started off doing accommodation only. It was our first, shall we say, tool to assist travellers, a certain niche of travellers, and
Mhm.
we have expanded from there. So the whole idea comes from the fact that my partner and I, we have that gene that says you've got to keep traveling, you've got to explore more of the world. There's
Mhm.
people, there's places, there's stuff out there yet to discover.
Mhm.
And as we've travelled around the world and continue to build a business or employment in some eras, we realized that there was a mismatch between the needs of this growing market, which we generically call digital nomads, and what was being made available by the traditional accommodations industry around the world, which is effectively what we created. We created an intersection between accommodation providers and this new emerging market. So that's how it came fundamentally about.
Got it. So one of the things I'm always curious about founders is how did they hit upon an idea? Okay, because it takes a lot of commitment. It takes a big chunk of your life to give, isn't it? So where did you see the possibilities? Did you understand that space? So where you saw that the space is going to be booming. So give us a sense of this entire digital nomad space, and where did you see opportunity for you to build a business, and how big is the market in the future potential?
It's really interesting. So I guess fundamentally, having done a lot of travel around the world to more than 100 countries, and living the lifestyle of a digital nomad for more than 8 years, just has given me an insight into this lifestyle and the needs on a day by day basis. So the traditional suppliers of travel accommodation fall into two categories. They're either leisure, holidays, vacation, whatever you want to call it. It's a leisure product or it's a business product. And a business product normally associated with downtown central business areas. So when we created NomadStays, we said, all right, there's about 3 million digital nomads in the world. It's a finite market, but it's a well-yielding market because these 3 million people are traveling full-time. They're spending more on travel than probably any other travel group, except maybe super luxury. So it's a lucrative market. Now, we didn't need the growth beyond 3 million to make a very sizable business because the value in their bookings was already hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. But what COVID has done is there's created a growth in a whole lot of sub-niche and general digital nomad sort of categories. And so the market now might not be 3 million, it's probably closer to 10 times that, 30 million. Some people are predicting as many as 100 million digital nomads, remote workers in the world today, but there's a whole lot of definitional stuff that dictates what products work for which sub-niches.
Correct. So help us understand the niches. What niches? How I'm sure there are different kinds of digital nomads. Okay, so
Yes.
there are people who are hybrid. That means there are people who have jobs, but they have a contract where it's flexible. That means a part of the year they can work remotely. And then there are digital nomads who are full-time digital nomads. And then there are digital nomads who only travel and work during summers and holidays. Could you distill the differences between different kinds of digital nomads that you have seen?
You are right. Those three are very large categories today in their own right. We actually track about 30 different sub-niches. And sort of people that associate with the lifestyle of a digital nomad. Many won't call themselves digital nomads. Others that are holidayers like to call themselves digital nomads. So it gets a bit blurry on the edges.
Right.
But fundamentally, we're talking about long-term travelers as the major element of what's going on. So they're not sitting in one location for years at a time. They are traveling to different parts of the country or the world. And the second part that is different from a traditional leisure market, leisure travel being the biggest travel sector in the world, is the fact that they're working. So they're not out exploring tourist properties and areas all day, every day. They're actually working at a table, at a desk, or stand up, or a co-working space, and have got clients and customers to deal with, and that requires online. So they've got this intersection of travel and work, and the work element is not necessarily associated with a natural business district like a downtown city centre where most business travel would go, or a conference centre or something like that. The work element is now distributed around the world.
Got it. So what are the specific accommodation requirements? How are the accommodation needs, living needs of a digital nomad different than a business traveler or somebody who wants to live in a hotel? Okay, so are there differences there?
So from a facilities and amenities point of view, yes, and this is where we need to get very specific. So we call our market a lifestyle market. It's a lifestyle traveller market, and as a lifestyle traveller, I need somewhere to work. I need a table. I need a chair. Ideally, it's comfortable. I need a price that is compatible with what my mortgage or rent might be back at home. I don't want to be paying tourist prices for 365 days of the year. That's just astronomical. I also need, obviously, great internet. So a non-internet connected place just doesn't work for me. Right. Now, because I'm not eating at a restaurant every day like I might as a tourist, I now need to have access to things like supermarkets. So it starts bringing in facilities that a normal property, long-term rental properties might have.
Right.
Now, some hotels do this, some apartment hotels, which is an element of the hotel industry and doing it particularly well, and resorts are moving from being pure leisure into long-term lifestyle as well. You're seeing migration and things like cruise ships, which were all about having fun and parties and great meals, suddenly now moving into having workspaces and quiet areas and networking and conferences while sailing the world. So you're seeing a migration of early adopters, early innovators. They're migrating into different product sets to suit this new lifestyle traveler market.
Mm. So, what kind of segment were you looking at when you began your business? Like, did you want to cater to a certain segment, or did you want to cater to all kinds of digital nomads? Did you find a niche for yourself to begin with?
Well, the 30 odd different categories didn't exist in quantity when we started. So that's developed since. Fundamentally, we are assisting people that would fall into the explorer category. They have that gene like we do that just can't wait to explore somewhere else in the world, discover something new, immerse themselves into a community. So travel becomes more dominant than just a roof over your head. So a typical rental landlord is providing accommodation somewhere that's safe and clean and nice and pleasant in a community.
Right.
And for some people, that's important. Our clientele are travellers. They're out exploring the world. But it's hard to travel the world and find something compatible all the time because laws, products change from country to country. There are very few global platforms like ours where you can actually look up availability. In fact, our early product initiatives have all been copied by the big leisure guys. So when we opened, there were no 30-day discounts on Airbnb. Maximum booking.com booking was 28 days. None of them had live inventory outside of city centres. They were all request-based. So these things take a long time for a nomad to work their way through. Hi, have you got something? What's the price? Have you got availability for this month or this week? And so nomads would typically open up 3-4 conversations to find one place to rent every time they changed house, which was a terrible overhead. So getting the right convenience items was an early part of our growth, is getting that stuff well ahead of what the competitors have now copied us.
Got it. So you started with the explorer segment you mentioned. How did you build your so what's your business model? Like, you are a digital platform.
Yep.
You have got nothing to do with the physical assets, right?
Correct.
You are only responsible for matchmaking and
Correct.
inventory building and booking. So how do you build your inventory? Okay, what's your
Certainly.
relationship with the asset owners and stuff like that?
So yes, our segment is known as an online travel agent, an OTA.
Got it.
Other OTAs include Booking.com, Vrbo, Airbnb. Those are the big three in this sector around the world, and the big OTAs, they achieve about somewhere between 20 and 25% of all accommodation bookings in the world. So the vast majority of the bookings are not done on OTAs. That's an important element.
Could you explain that? What do you
Sure.
mean vast majority is not done on OTAs?
Yeah. So each hotel, for instance, is the classic, a Marriott group, a Hyatt group. They've got their own marketing, they've got their own branding, they've got their own loyalty clubs.
Got it.
You've got things like airlines that will partner with these people and put agents, packages and things together for promotion.
Got it.
And so what we think is the natural place to go for booking somewhere to stay for a holiday, what many people believe through the marketing is these OTAs, OTAs. Right. But in essence, we're still a small section of the overall accommodation booking.
Got it.
Yeah. So we started off with that travel activity. We found what happened was when COVID hit, suddenly customers dried up. But our market, digital nomads, continued to travel.
Right.
Many of them hunkered down in the countries they were in. They didn't go home by and large. There was an element, maybe a quarter of the market went home, but the vast majority continued to travel and continued to provide good yield to properties and regions that could make themselves better suited.
Got it.
And so as this market became known amongst the property suppliers around the world, they found us. We have a strong SEO, we have strong social. They found our brand. In fact, we've done no advertising at all since we've begun. It's all been natural word of mouth or social sharing and SEO.
Yeah. So you mentioned that. So my question was, how did you get the inventory?
They came to us.
Oh, they came to you. Okay,
they came
nice.
to us. Yeah, and they still do. Just this morning I got a random email from a part of Mauritius called Nosy Bee. Now it's my personal connection, my personal WhatsApp messages, and they said, "Listen, we've got some really good stuff. We want to partner with you. We saw about you." It's like, okay, so how did this person get my personal contact all the way down on the offshore area of Mauritius? Or Madagascar. Sorry, it was Madagascar. And so that's an everyday occurrence for us.
Yeah, but you need to give your a little bit of your secret sauce, especially new entrepreneurs who want to know how to get the word out. Okay, how can they get organic traffic, especially because nobody, especially small entrepreneurs, cannot afford for all the money that they need to pump into Facebook ads and Google ads and stuff like that. So, do you have any suggestions that you might have used to grow organically and get the word out?
Yes, certainly. So this is not my first travel brand.
Okay.
Our social media reach before we launched NomadStays was already over 100,000.
Wow.
And it came in two areas. So for nearly 20 years, I've been helping startups as a startup mentor and accelerator assistance. And in travel. So our travel brands and leisure travel, we've got, we do tours in the Sahara. We do back tours in Australia. We've got different brands that have been in travel. And then we've got different startup and innovation brands. So we use those. So that was how we started pumping out our message on social, by just putting a NomadStays element into this. We then decided that SEO was ripe. It was a market that we could get into very easily and cheaply at the time. So we put money into getting a great SEO activity. We also built a very SEO friendly platform, and platforms like ours, which is thousands of pages, command a bigger space than what a blog page or 5 blog articles on a small website might contain. And then we pushed a lot of our personal story, and we took a thought leadership position by using places like LinkedIn, where we would talk about the future as it was coming, what was happening. We were talking about facts that we were seeing as well, rather than stories that you generally find out there that are not supported by facts.
Right.
We started seeing who was traveling, how much they were paying, where they were going to, where the searches were, and we started talking about facts. So we took our thought leadership, and then that allowed us to connect stronger with industry leaders, particularly in the travel and property industries.
Correct. Nice. I know there are first-time founders who spend all their energy and focus and building a great product, and then on the launch day it's crickets, right? So
yes.
But what you are saying is you need to start your distribution channel far ahead before the product is being built. Isn't it?
Yeah, Seth Godin's got some great stuff. His book about tribes is so fantastic. So you need some momentum, and a founder should have already done this with his testing of the market to find out, to validate his product before he starts pouring in too much effort into building.
Got it. it.
So it won't be necessarily refined, but it's enough to show that there's an interest, there's a market there, there's an element of the groups of people that like what you're doing. So that's pretty important at any stage of a startup, is to always have something that's valued by a segment of the market.
Valued and trusted and believed, isn't it?
Trust can be built. So, you can open and be untrusted, but you can also borrow other people's trust.
Got it. Okay. Nice. But I'm sure it's not all rosy. Okay. It looks
No.
like lot of hard work. First of all, why don't you, if you're comfortable, why don't you share the how big is the business, the size of the business today?
Okay,
And
I'll share some of those elements. It's still a private company.
yes, and then I would then like to know which were the pain points in the journey. Okay, where were your dark days in building this?
Okay, so we are, as I mentioned before, a little over 3 years old since we've launched. We run a team of remote people that vary between about 5 and 12 different players that come in at different types of periods of the time. We have about 600 individual owners, and some of those are corporations that own properties on our site. We are in 72 countries today.
Wow.
Our inventory runs between any particular day, could be as few as 500 rooms available to 2,500 rooms, depending on different times of the year and occupancy availability, all those sorts of things. So it's quite dynamic. Prices, availability are constantly changing. Our property owners get to change their prices at any stage they would like.
Mm-hmm.
They get to turn on or turn off their availability. So why would they do that? Because you can make a lot of money when the leisure market is hot. Peak summer in Europe is a fantastic time of the year to make a lot of money, but it's only a short period of time. And so people will go and make as much money as possible during the peaks, and then they'll come back to their second peak, which is often the nomad market.
Got it.
Hard things. Yes, there's lots of hard things. This market has been changing tremendously. One of the aspects of the growth of the market, it meant that while we was small, the market was small and underdeveloped, it was too, shall we say, small for the major players to move into. When the market started growing into tens of millions of potential players, suddenly the Airbnbs, the Booking.coms, the Verbos started taking our initiatives and building it into their own. We started seeing an increase in smaller platforms moving into this space. That's disappeared of late because one of the rebound effects of Airbnb's success particularly has been that various countries and regions around the world are now cracking down very heavily on what's called short-term rentals. So various countries and cities will stop renting short-term. And then if you look at the EU, they've just brought out a whole lot of new laws about every property that is going to be listed on a platform now has to hand over a massive amount of personal information to those platforms. We have to, as platforms, we have to report that to the EU authorities. And we're talking about what's your land registration number? What's your date of birth? Where were you born? What's your VAT? What's your bank account number? So all of this is all new laws. And then about 6 months ago, the EU's announced a new sales tax or new VAT tax regime to kick in a couple of years, which is going to affect small properties that have not been covered by VAT requirements before. So this style of administrative overhead is one of the big headaches, not just for us, but the overall small end of the property market. And I guess what we're seeing is a lot of people flowing into the market, having a go, realizing it's hard, and then leaving. So there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of
consolidation is there consolidation, like when they're leaving, are they merging with a big player or something of that sort? Is that how it's happening?
Most are shutting down. Some of them are merging, but we're not talking about huge amounts of money trading hands here.
Got
It's fairly latent, small results by the time these people are going. So if you look at some of the players, we've seen a big move by the Selena Group in the last little while. So
Yeah.
Selena is a hotel brand. It's a chain, in essence, that has been targeting backpackers / young Gen X digital nomads.
Yeah.
They did a listing on the New York Stock Exchange last year and have been growing heavily. I think, what have they got, 200 properties around the world in the last 5 years now.
So what's their model? Are they operators, or are they also a digital platform, or the OTAs?
They are an operator. So they own their own properties or have rented their own properties. So they're a hotel brand, like a Hyatt or a Hilton or a Best Western sort of brand. So they're trying to get people to stay at their properties that are under their management.
Got it. And there is another player called Outside, no?
Outside, yep. Outside is fundamentally a very US-based long-term accommodation platform. So they've come out of the long-term rental market, the traditional apartment rental location business that you'll have in many places. They then moved into the digital nomad space, but they seem to have retreated back to the US after they've not been able to crack some of that.
Got it.
Yeah, so this is part of this massive dynamic industry right now, where for the bigger players, it's hard to be all places everywhere. And the product requirements are so detailed now that you actually need to have some great knowledge about what is needed for each market.
Right. So primarily because these assets are so different and unique by themselves, do you do any kind of due diligence before listing them out on your platform?
Oh yes, yeah.
And is there any consistency in terms of how the assets look like, or is it, the standard information for each of the assets and stuff like that?
So we are not limiting the style of our properties very much. So we've got everything from vans, van life, boats that you can rent and live in for a while, to hotels, to apartments, to resorts, to heritage houses, castles, things like that.
Cruises?
Castles, historic.
No, cruises.
We're not the cruises. No, not so much at this point in time. It's a wait and see. So the cruise industry is quite heavily integrated with mainstream GDS systems, which are a technical overhead in terms of sharing of inventory. So not at this point in time, but watch this space.
Got it. So how do you? So what's the tech like? Because of course it's booking, but how do you sync up status, relevant status, or dynamic status of the assets, like in terms of when are the guests leaving and stuff like that?
Yep. No, very good question. So when we opened, there was something like maybe 40%, certainly well under 50% of the small accommodation sector. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Airbnb types, the mums and dads that have an apartment here and there. Less than half of them were using some sort of channel manager booking inventory system. That segment has grown heavily, and you've seen the emergence of a technology called iCalendar, or iCal as we call it.
iCalendar, yes.
iCalendar, which has been morphed into being the standard way that a small property, a small room, shares its availability. So somebody could run a Google Calendar, set that Google Calendar up for their apartment, and then share that availability through the iCal language to all sorts of players. Again, it's a global standard, so once you can read iCal, you can read that in. And we do a lot of that at the small end.
Nice.
When you move into the larger end, the bigger properties, they tend to use some sort of property management system, PMS system, or they'll use some larger integration. So this is a hard element because there's no standards in this middleware layer around the world. We've spent several years looking to find players that can act as a middleware, but we haven't found it. So we tend to build our own proprietary interfaces with different larger channel managers for particularly hotel style booking systems.
Got it.
Now, to give you a quick explanation, when you have a small property, you have your room either available or it's not. When you book into a hotel, you might book a double room, but there are 50 double rooms in the hotel. You don't know which double room you're getting at that point in time.
Right. Yes.
So your physical allocation generally doesn't occur until you arrive on the doorstep. So there's two fundamentally different tech systems behind the global booking.
Got it. But have you had no issues in terms of accuracy of information, wherein somebody books in and then the room is not available and stuff like that? Like, have you ironed those issues out already in processes over time?
It's one of our biggest headaches, particularly with these smaller, more casual renters out there. They often don't have as higher quality of information as we provide. And so, yes, we've had a small number of properties that have breached their agreements, have rejected bookings we've made for them, and they're no longer listed on our platform.
I see.
So we can't deal with, shall we say, old-fashioned players. We don't deal with a request-based, a human-based system. It's all has to be modern and automated, which is why we are looking for the more innovative, modern, forward-thinking property owners. And developers, because there's a whole lot of new developments happening in this space as properties move to become more multi-purpose.
You mean asset developers, real estate
asset developers? Yeah. Whereas I did a review of a property recently in Albania, for instance, and they wanted to build a 100-room backpacker hotel in the middle of a very nice adventure location.
Wow.
Now that's great. But this region doesn't actually get 100 backpackers a day arriving, or they don't have a community of 100. So it was going to be difficult for them to fill up using just a backpacker hotel.
Got it. Yeah.
But if they moved into apartments that were medium and short-term rental, if they moved into co-working, if they moved into co-living elements within their property, suddenly they've got multiple markets that they could appeal to.
So this sector is emerging in terms of getting organized by large players who are creating custom-built spaces, living spaces for digital nomads, co-living and stuff like that, right?
Correct. You are seeing some very good global players starting to build these sorts of multi-use properties, or to reconfigure their existing assets.
Got it.
Now this market's not standing still. So what's hot this month might not be hot this month next year. And that's why I talk about multi-use, because as a large asset owner, you don't want to have all your eggs into a market that has disappeared all of a sudden. You want to be able to morph your product into where the market is.
Right. But digital nomadism as a trend, do you see it evolving? How do you see it changing? Like, do you see the behavioral patterns of these digital nomads evolving in any way, which will impact the businesses? What's your opinion there?
There's a lot of different activity going on. To some extent, there's almost a war happening out there in the world today between the pro digital nomad remote working tribe and the no, you must all come back to the office and work in the office tribe. So there's a political war happening at the thought leadership. From a practical point of view, there will be many, many more people working from non-home locations in the next few years.
Right.
How far where they go will depend on convenience. Convenience is also tied with law. So, for instance, who would have thought that in the last 3 years, 50 countries released a digital nomad visa?
Yeah. Right. You're right.
I didn't predict that 3 years ago, but it's been interesting to see it happen. Who would have thought that the tax rules...
reason is pure economics, right? Sorry to interrupt you. The reason for digital nomad visas is pure economics, right? People, countries would want more and more travelers to come and contribute to the economy. Am I right?
One of two markets really coming from this digital nomad visa. So first thing to recognise is they're called digital nomad visas, but very few of them are actually visas for digital nomads. They're mainly a short-term migration visa. So it allows you to migrate to a country for a year or two and legally work at an easier way than what you could before.
Got it.
To give you an example, so I'm Australian. You can hear that funny little accent from down under. I have a visa for France. It's a technology visa for bringing our startup there. It took 18 months for us to get this visa. It's a 4-year visa. It's a nice length of time, but it's still 18 months is a long investment of time and money and stuff.
Right.
So during that period, I couldn't live in France full time. I couldn't spend my money in France. So France wasn't getting my economic activity as a migrant. So many countries are looking for economic migrants to grow their populations in their higher skilled, higher earning players. Others are looking to boost their tourism industry by making tourists not just able to stay for a month or two, but maybe to stay for a year.
Got it.
So there's a couple of different approaches going on at the moment, and these 50-odd visa types around the world, many of them will morph into a more sophisticated version 2 product in the next few years, I'm expecting.
Right. So let's continue on the question of. It's still early days, like 3.5 years for you is still early days. I think you have to. There is a lot more potential for you, but still, what have been the hard lessons along the way? Like, what were the bumps along the road?
A lot of our bumps are administrative. They're a lot about moving from a well-organised administration, English-speaking part of the world to a different legislation. We're seeing the investment community being focused on SaaS companies. They like to see great revenue and profitability coming at the early stages.
Right.
Yet that doesn't really exist in the travel industry.
Right.
Where many travel companies have not made money but have grown and developed very highly, and it's a different mindset. So investment community has been hard. There's been a lot of effort and time we've put into helping properties become aware and to optimize themselves for this market. And then COVID and other markets have taken a lot of those properties away. They've left the supply side of the industry. So that's been disappointing to see because you put a lot of effort in to get a nice relationship and it's gone. So today, our biggest issue we're facing is, as one of the major brands around the world, we've got something like 500 nomads a day hitting our website. There are tens and tens of thousands of engagements each month. We have a very high reach, but converting that into bookings is the current challenge. To increase bookings, I should say. Increasing that conversion rate is the biggest challenge we're facing right now in light of lot of
what's the friction? What's the friction there? What is the friction for conversion?
The what? Sorry, the friction.
What is the friction? Like, what is a blocker for people that are anyways coming to the website but not converting?
The friction. The friction is competition. Many people will believe that a leisure platform is a leisure OTA is the standard place they should look and go to find somewhere. Whereas as being a minnow, a large minnow, means that we've got to try harder to build up that level of trust. We also have to try harder in terms of increasing our inventory around the world.
Got it. So it's always they are looking at more and more choices, and it's more choices means more confusion. So they want to make the best, right? So
correct.
Got it. So if you have more and more inventory and you become known as that one category player, that becomes easy for you. So
correct. We're already half the price of almost any other player. So we have this competitive advantage that we've got something that's right for you to move into and start working from straight away at a reasonable, what we call an affordable price. Here in Europe, for instance, in 4 years, I've never paid more than €1,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
So, we sell everything up to $25,000 a month in places like Dubai, but the normal nomad is looking for standard rental mortgage sort of equivalents that they can handle within their normal monthly incomes every month of the year, or 9-10 months of the year at least.
So are there preferences, like do most of these explorer and nomads, they're looking within the city or in the outskirt, like facing the beach and stuff like that? What are the preferences, or do they vary? Like, do they like to be around the city or away from the city?
I think there's a whole series of different players out there. We're finding young first-time travelers that might have called themselves a backpacker a few years ago that are now calling themselves digital nomads. They like to go places with high energy, dancing, music, restaurants, inner city, more community, more activities. Most nomads, the average nomad's an older age group. It's usually 35 years or older. They tend to, particularly if they're in a period of their career that is building and conscientious, they'd like to go somewhere quieter, more balanced, better quality of life. And that varies from mountains to beachside. Some early stage, like often early stage entrepreneurs will go somewhere cheap and just smash out code. So they're looking. So here I'm in Slovakia at the moment. I'm paying about €400 a month. There's 1 gigabit fiber optic to the houses around here in a town that's barely 1,000 people.
Wow.
So you go to places like this, you can hang out and code to your heart's content.
Okay, cool.
And then you got all these people that are passionate about sport, and so they'll follow their sport all around the world. They're kite surfing or skiing or something else that drives their passion. So they'll follow the network of events.
Got it. So in that case, if they have such wide requirements, do you ensure that you present all of that for every property? Like, do you say where are the nearby pubs, or what are
We
the
do.
amenities nearby? What does that place
We do.
offer? Okay.
Yeah, we have maps of nearby transport, supermarkets, restaurants, pubs, all that sort of thing on every one of our properties. It's a lovely feed we get out of a supplier out of Spain. That's really quite good. We also feature amenities that others don't. So, for instance, external monitors. Being able to plug your laptop into a larger monitor for a Nomad is really gold, because suddenly you've got a lot more space and you don't have to carry a big monitor under your arm.
Got it.
Face scrutiny coming into the country with a monitor when may not be working or not, and all those sorts of things. So we do external monitors. We do pet friendly. We have actually all these genres of different types of properties that you can pick and choose. You can choose a village life and have a look at all the properties that have great village life. You can have, like I said, pet friendly. Where you can find places you can travel. I travel with my dog, so pet friendly was just one of those obvious ones that we had from day one. So there's a big variety of needs. Yes.
Do you consult these asset owners on how best they can promote their assets, or what kind of amenities they should add to make it more attractive to?
We do, and in fact, we're getting more and more requests for advisory work. So that's something my co-founder and I are doing a bit more of, and it's also for the destination management companies, for the tourism bodies around the world that are realising the wealth being spent by digital nomads is actually quite significant in the tourism travel market.
Nice.
And want to prepare things better. So,
excellent.
Yeah, there is this general understanding today what a digital nomad remote worker market means, and we're seeing people change. Whereas 3 years ago when we opened, explaining to them what a digital nomad is. So it moved very quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, especially after COVID, it has accelerated like nothing before. I was curious to know whether these assets are listing themselves in multiple platforms. Like, do you find the same assets in Airbnb, or are they exclusively listed with you?
Um, it's interesting to say. So the vast majority of our properties are listed on multiple platforms.
Hmm.
There are some industry reports to say that a typical, shall we say, dedicated property owner will list themselves on at least 30 platforms.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
So there is a significant overhead in terms of managing that. And what a leisure OTA wants is different to a lifestyle OTA. So they're not interchangeable all that well. The marketing descriptions are not interchangeable all that well. So, but this is part of choosing your market and getting your promotional material right for the market that OTA or agency deals with. What we find is that, for instance, Airbnb, an average Airbnb booking, according to their public reports, is 1.1 nights, and the 80% of the people, I think, from their reports, travel 100 kilometres from their home. So it's a very different market doing Airbnb than a long haul market like an Australian in Slovakia or an American in Czech Republic. You know, that's a very different market and needs a very different reach. So part of our model is that we don't book anything less than a week. So our typical booking going to a property owner is larger than any other network that they have.
Got it. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Cool. So you are you like one of the thought leaders in this space? Like, are you in full demand? People call you to podcast and keynotes and stuff like that to gain knowledge from you. Is that how?
There's a bit of that, but we encourage that because we want to spread the word that this is a good market. It's a quality market, and there's good money to be made by property owners, asset owners, and operators in this space, and that increases the choices for the clients, for the digital nomads. I personally like remote areas. I like to see the growth and economic stimulus that travel and tourism can bring to lesser known regions. We have a market. You know, I was just sending some stuff off this morning to Eswatini, for instance. You know, the old Swaziland, tiny little country down there between Mozambique and South Africa, and here we are. We've got a chance of bringing thousands, tens of thousands of rand, dollars, I'm not quite sure what their currency is, into that country that will help the development of the economy, particularly in regional areas that don't normally get exposed to these opportunities. To me, that's really powerful. That's income. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, because incessant traveling over the years has gotten a bad rap because the popular touristy places are getting overcrowded, and the local economies are actually not able to bear the increased prices and stuff like that, right? So, and
Correct.
also it's very inconvenient for the localers when during, especially in peak holiday seasons. So I had another guest on my podcast. He's also digital nomadism in India, and now he's opening branches in Vietnam. So what he's promoting is to distribute travelers to stay in for digital nomads to stay outside the cities
Yep.
in rural India, because it has multifold advantages. First of all, you are helping empower the economy
Yep.
of the local communities there, and then you get to understand the culture of villages and remote places. So he's promoting that idea through his digital nomad company.
My co-founder has just been back 2 weeks after spending a month and a half in rural villages in India, doing exactly as you've described.
Is it okay?
Absolutely, we're quite fans of India. We've travelled there many times, and we see a great opportunity, particularly as the Indian economy grows and diversifies, and some of the barriers to trade is coming down. In fact, I was trying to go and spend a couple of months in India myself to join her recently, but this is where some of the laws come in a little bit more difficult. It's very easy to get for an Australian at least, very easy to get a visa for even 10 years to go to India these days.
Right.
But India doesn't permit dogs to be imported very easily.
Okay.
So we had to take India off the list from our family point of view because we travel with a dog.
Got it. Yeah. So this gentleman, his company is called Nomad, and he has these assets, co-living assets for digital nomads. And interestingly, in spite of India being huge, most of his traffic comes from foreigners who travel to India and live in this, because he has created a community, because he has just similar story like yours. He was quite active and he built a brand around himself for the digital nomads, and that's how he attracts a lot of foreign digital nomads to India.
Yes.
So very, very interesting. Excellent. You asked me to ask a question, which is how you are contributing to the property industry, right? So how do you help the property industry? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So I guess the thing is, with the digital nomad market, it's for many people it's relatively new. For people that have traveled all around the world multiple times, it's business as usual. But there's a great opportunity of making some good money from a market that you haven't heard about before, and particularly for leisure properties, to modify your product is relatively easy to become compatible for digital nomads. So there's a way that you can diversify your markets by both having leisure and lifestyle, and marketing yourself, your differences a little bit more. Now, early adopters are starting to get some of that boost today because they've already, like your Nomad Gal guys, have already established a brand, become an attractor.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity for many more properties, and it helps pay the bills, obviously, improve profitability, and allow more investments.
Right.
And so my urging is to look at the digital nomad market as another market of which can yield very nice returns.
Nice. Excellent. Cool. So my next question was, where do you go from here? Like you talked about your existing growth story. What is the vision for the next year, 2 years on the roadmap?
Okay, so we're doubling down and doing more integrations with mainstream inventory availability systems around the world. We're integrating with channel managers more, and that way we can easily send bookings through to larger players into their soon-to-be nomad-ready properties, particularly in the mainstream hotel, resort, apart hotel industry.
Right.
We are adding more and more tools that assist digital nomads. So we are beta testing our visa tracking system, for instance.
Ah, nice.
So, there's only so many days most people are allowed to stay as a tourist or a business person in a foreign country.
Right. Yeah.
Making sure you don't overstay, avoiding problems crossing borders. This is a fairly major time-consuming activity.
Right.
And it's not as simple as you would think. So we've got those sort of tools coming out. We've set up a marketplace about 6 months ago. So we've got a mechanism for digital nomad suppliers to reach a large number of that market that is growing.
What do you mean by suppliers? What kind of suppliers are we talking about?
Well, for instance, you might be an eSIM phone provider, and you have a product that suits digital nomads.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So you're going to put that onto Facebook and advertise it on Facebook. You want to advertise it on Google, very broad, generic sort of platforms. Or do you want to go specifically to the market? So we are in that specific supplier.
Excellent.
We have, I guess, since the decline of affiliate programs, there is a bit of a growth in a complementary industry called co-hosting. So we've been building up our range of co-hosts. So co-hosts are the marketers of a property that are doing it as a paid service, listing them on 30 to platforms, making sure that photos are up to date, making sure the rates are up to date, marketing terms, descriptions, facilities, all that up to date, keeping your network live is important. So we've got some co-host marketing facilities kicking in. So all in all, we're building out our tool set to make it easier for both property owners and for our nomads, the core two markets that we supply.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah, so
Cool.
it's much more about tools than, shall we say, just nice stories.
Nice. Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a very, very knowledgeable conversation here. I got to learn a lot from Mark. Mark, thank you for taking time out and sharing with us wisdom that is accumulated with a lot of hard work, no, a lot of slogging in the last several years.
Yeah.
And today you have emerged as a thought leader, building a decent amount, a decent sized business, which eventually has a potential to grow big.
Indeed.
But are you going all in? Like you talked about the investor, because usually growth needs investment, right? So what's your strategy like? Do you want to pump in more money? Do you want to draw money
Yes,
from?
we would love investors. So the core goal at the moment is to find a lead investor or lead investors that understand, that like the travel industry, that recognise the role that we can carve out for ourselves even bigger, and to pour that growth in. We're lucky that we've built all of our tech. We've built a lot of our reach. We have a lot of customers. So it's an acceleration time, not a building time for us.
Got it. So you're nicely poised to be attractive to investors, because you're not building the business. You're
we believe so. Yes.
All you need, the template is ready. You just need to scale it.
Yeah.
Excellent. All the best, Mark. And yeah, we will catch soon in a couple of years to see where NomadStays has headed in the next couple of years. All right,
Ravi, thank you so much. Your questions are deep and insightful, and I can see why you've got such a great following from such diligent work.
Thank you so much, Mark. See you around. Bye-bye.
Bye.